Can you hear me, those online?
Yes, yes, clearly audible. Clearly audible.
So I think people in this part of the world, we are used to, managing by crisis. You know, it starts from the time we were in school and college. I think it's just natural. We always waited, most of us at least, including me, waited to get closer to the exams, to study, stay up late, or get up at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and deliver. Okay, so that's only when you have. So I don't want to say, but people from this part of the world are excellent in performing under stress. Okay, so that first start on a lighter way. So I think that inherent DNA in ourselves helped us to a large extent to kind of overcome a good part of the pandemic crisis, stress, where we just performed. We pulled ourselves up to perform, and that is the first point. And second point, which I think is very important, is among all the functions in the organization, I think for first time, the role of supply chain has really hit the roof. Okay. Earlier, supply chain was a kind of a back office, or perceived to be a back office job. But today, I think people realize the value of supply chain. And supply chain not only included the physical movement, but also the people behind. Okay. So it gave a completely change in dimension, that it's the people, process, and products that will make a successful supply chain. So these points, I think, came out extremely clearly. One thing is for sure, nobody in the world was an expert on the pandemic. We need to accept that. And everybody went along the way learning. So I think we performed day to day by learning mistakes, understanding. And we need to accept that. I think most of the people have performed quite well. Of course, a lot of improvement. If you look back, there could be learnings. But I think end of the day, people came together and are still performing. Okay, we're not there yet, but we are going in a pretty fast pace. Also, something new which happened, which we never realized, that a lot of work could be done from home. Which changed the dimension, the way of thinking, that all people need to be in office all the time. So it's not necessary. And there could be some changes of whether we need so much office space. It's just a thought. And many people thought because of technology, because of internet, you could work well at home. Of course, we had to accept that there would be a kind of background sound of the family, but that's fine, as long as the work was done. And sometimes I could think, especially people in the Mumbai area who travel, 3 to 4 hours per day, you could save that time and also perform at odd hours in the evening. The vaccine program at least in Mumbai, which at least I have experienced, and being from the pharma industry, I had certain thoughts and concerns, and I'm sure I gave my better half a rough time, because I kept telling her, will they do this, will they do that? So she said, just keep quiet and take the shot. Okay. So when I went for the vaccine, it's an experience. My eyes were open. Are they going to use disposable syringes? Is that cold packed? Is it going to be the temperature? It's 2 to 8. How are they going to pack it? Then I was looking inside, do they have a gel pack? But I tell you, it was working. My experience. Okay, there may have been exceptions, but it was working. So even such a large scale of vaccination program in the country, such a large diverse program, it was working. So we could have the resources, the boxes, it was working. And I tell you, whether it's the doctors or the people or the nurses who were vaccinating, they were doing their job. So the system process was working. And in some cases, before you left the vaccination center, you would get an SMS that you've been vaccinated. So it did work. Okay. Another thing which I need to comment, and that's a personal experience. I think if you share personal experience of the pandemic, it would be nice. For some reason, my family and myself, we got COVID. Okay, and after taking both vaccines. So after taking both vaccines, you think you're free. Okay, but fortunately, it was very mild. We didn't even know until we happened to test because of some other reason. Now the local authorities, my experience, the way the follow-up was done, every day I got a SMS on my automatic calling on my phone. It would ask me, do you have A, B, C, D symptoms? You have to press 1, 2, 1, 2. And it went on for the whole 17 days. And after that, I got a call, personal call from the doctor, whoever from the corporation, BMC, asking me, are you okay? So I tell you, in such a large city, my experience was excellent. Okay. Second thing is, my mother was in hospital while we had COVID. So we couldn't get out of the house to go to the hospital. So she was in the hospital, and how to connect with her, thanks to technology, mobile phones, WhatsApp. She didn't know how to use WhatsApp. The staff, the nurses, they used to put her on WhatsApp to see us because we couldn't see her, we couldn't visit her. So I tell you, the plus points, many people criticize, but there was great human factor which came out. Okay, the good in the people really came out. And I know that today we are going to talk about several subjects, and we have fantastic panelists, and we are talking about investing in cold chain capabilities for the future. We have been talking about it for a long time, and I think today this has been a real wake-up call where people really understood the impact of cold chain. And we have stalwarts from the pharma industry. We have Srinivas Rao from Sun Pharma. We have Gaurav from retail, Reliance Retail, and of course Sudhir here from Pfizer. And of course we have stalwarts from the airlines. We have Shankaraya from Swiss, and we have Shadash, if I pronounce your name correct, Shadash from
It's correct. Thank you.
Turkish, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So good. So that's right. So we have experts here. And this is also one forum where we have partially people physically present and partially virtually. So we are, you can see the movement from completely virtual to partial. And I hopefully in the future we are physically present, because human contact and networking makes a big difference. Okay. So I start with my first question, and then I'm going to ask the pharma guys first. Okay. So maybe Sudhir, I'll take you on first, and then.
Sure.
Yeah. So my first question is, are pharma companies who are involved in the supply chain investing in temperature controlled facilities closer to both supply and demand, whether you are having freezer farms to dry ice or cold chain, not necessarily in the factory itself, but are you investing it with your service providers? Are you pressurizing them? That is the point. Are we moving more into cold chain for both domestic as well as export? I do understand the focus here is on global and export, but I think if you don't cover both aspects of the supply chain, you'll never get an integrated supply chain. So Sudhir, could you respond?
Sure. Before I touch upon this subject, which is very vital, I just wanted to build on what you said in case of supply chain, which used to be, on the backdrop and making the show. But you would have realized for the last 20 months, even the Prime Minister of India is saying, do you know supply chain, right? So supply chain has now come into the forefront. And hats off to the people actually in the health ministry and those people, who are the transportation, particularly in government. In fact, I have an opportunity to, talk with Love Agarwal, who was actually, managing the show during the pandemic. And they were quite receptive to know how to do all these things, because up to that, situation, and that too in such a large scale, is something they were not, actually experienced about. So firstly, they have to start doing it in the government way, but after that they realize it is not going to be the way they are doing. So they have invited, private sector and try to learn, got some kind of, techniques or expertise embedded into it. And I should say the rest was the history. So they have touched upon more than 1 billion doses, and that to every nook and corner, including that of prime city, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 towns, villages, all sort of, all walk of life. So that is something, where supply chain has also become a talk of the town. And, e-commerce, pharmaceutical essentially were those things behind during these 20 months, supply chain was actually people. Now coming on to the cold chain, what, temperature controlled logistics. If I go back more than 5 years or 10 years down the line, we would find that there's just a handful of people who have been doing this. Vaccines are something, sometime just managing the show, because not that much, temperature control was needed actually, in case of old age vaccines, which were run by the government. And particularly like when it is being done at the health centers, all we know is that, they are just managing the show in terms of, keeping on the cold boxes or something like that. But actually, pandemic has shown the way it need to be explored, this particular sector. And I know the logistics service provider who are basically, coming to us and then asking, can we, diversify into the cold chain? So that is the scenario at this moment. And I feel not only vaccines, COVID-related vaccines, but there are many to come in the time to come for the next 3 to 5 years. It is going to be a walk of the life or way of the life that we have, instead of giving to the newborn babies, we have to have this. We have to receive time and again, as we have done in COVID-19. Now, having said that, is it really good to diversify on that? The answer is not a yes or no. It's basically very complex. Demand is something which is, we just cannot predict. And that is where, the people are scared to actually invest into it. But that is also one of the fact that without that, it cannot be done. So it need to be strengthened, and not only for the private sectors, but also for the government, states, central government. So I should say it will be really, a good move if people are now going to, diversify into the cold chain. So in my opinion, I mean, even though I should say compared to logistic industry, and that too so competitive, and in fact, like as we have heard, air versus sea or sea versus air, the time is changing or something like that. In this case also, the pure logistic, which is a normal logistic, and the temperature control logistic, again, will have a, a kind of, tightrope. So one, like, the companies like X-School, or like in case of Snowman, these are essentially only in cold chain, right? And they are also getting that kind of business. So, full concentration is going into it. But what I feel that, there should be some kind of balancing act in terms of normal logistics as well as cold chain as a arm of the total, so that, in case of any kind of, low season or like, low demand is there, one can compensate through that.
Thanks. So Srinivas, would you like to add something?
Yeah. Am I? Yeah. So, I will actually build upon some anecdotal stuff, just like what Ryan mentioned. Both of them mentioned that supply chain came to the forefront. Very good. Thankfully, personally, my daughter is actually studying. She went to study finance. Now she's saying, I want to study supply chain. I said, very good. Okay. I mean, apart from that, if you are talking about the specific question about the cold chain, I still remember as a child, there was a very small fridge in our home with a small single door and a small freezer inside it. So typically when you talk about supply chains, there is a 2 to 8 supply chain, there is a -20, so -18. Yeah. Even in every of our home, the normal refrigerator is a 2 to 8 and the deep freezer is actually a -18. Yeah. So all of our homes have it. And we have seen our homes actually upgrading from a small 165-liter, fridge to actually today 520-liter fridges, etc., etc. There's no reason on earth why the companies don't upgrade themselves from a logistics perspective, or from the ability to actually transport in either a refrigerated system or this. And I have seen over a period of last 25 years, believe me or not, I have not been in pharma for the last 30 years. Initial 25 years, I was in actually the foods and FMCG. There also I've seen huge amounts of upgrades which have happened. For example, ice creams, which I used to work for Unilever, and we used to transport ice creams from Thailand, the Cornetto thing, which had to be transported on minus 20 degrees. And we could actually find good quality infrastructure around the country over a period of time upgradation. So to answer your question very specifically, are companies investing? For sure, yes. Should they be investing? Definitely, yes. And are they investing enough? I think they were not, but now they have realized that they need to do a lot more, and they are doing it. That's my answer.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very specific and short and sweet.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way we would like it.
Yeah.
And now I would like to ask Shankar, who's the airline guy, what do you think is the status of cold chain from the not only airline but logistics service provider, the general infrastructure in the market?
First of all, I'd like to thank Reggie for calling me back because he has to still pay me the check. Thanks, Rohan, for the introduction, and thanks, Ryan, for the introduction. Frankly speaking, it's always said in India, the private entrepreneurship excels. Believe me, the cold chain had already kicked in when I cannot see Tushar, when they started the facility in Mumbai with Manoj way back in 2008. That's when we said we'll start moving pharma, because then we are compliant. They opened a terminal in Delhi. We said then we can start accepting pharma, we are compliant. But these are all pockets of excellence. The main area is the tarmac, the road. And one more thing, I put a kind of a rider because the main stakeholder is the government. We are still not a white country. We are still a country which is neither red, but a country that has to do X-ray of shipments. That's where the whole buck stops, because the moment you touch those shipments, you can contaminate, you can damage. We are handling it again and again. So this is the area where I would like to see a greater push. All stakeholders should go in with the representatives of the government to say that this is what we want to have a seamless performance. Otherwise, Mr. Rao can build as much as you want in this facility. The moment it's outside the door, what happens? I can have the best of the handling, because somewhere Ravi said it's only 8% by air. By the way, Ravi, for info, only 8% is handled by the airline, where in its custody. Rest 92% is with the stakeholders, with our partners, with our providers. And this is where we need that everybody is building their own facilities, their own compliances, SOPs, but all the gaps has to be closed. And this, unfortunately, I can go on record, has not changed over the decade and a half. Nothing is changing there. Because there is where we need collectively to go to the authorities to tell the people, if Europe can be a white country, why can't India become a white country? Why do we have to have so many touch points? Why can't it make it seamless? While we all in our private entrepreneurship excel with the quality, this is where the change has to come. Thank you, Ryan, for the question.
Thanks, Shankar. I'd like to move on to Gaurav, who is online. Can you hear me, Gaurav? You're connected?
Yes, Ryan. I can hear you. Am I audible clearly?
Yes. So the question is, how do pharma companies reduce their exposure to single sources and other supply chain risks by diversifying where they buy their materials? And how do these changes impact the overall dynamics of the supply chain?
Okay. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity, and I would really like to applaud and appreciate this hybrid meet. It's neither physical nor completely virtual. So this hybrid meet by transport and logistics team, and great work. So I think Ryan already mentioned the way we are used to working kind of under pressure. So I think great work. Thanks for the opportunity, and warm welcome to all the other co-panelists. Couldn't physically network, but yeah, great opportunity to connect with all of them again. So to very quickly answer the question, so a lot of pharmaceutical companies are today investing in the overall cold chain network and cold chain logistics. That's a very, I would say, given. Everybody sees that yes, future is moving to a lot more into injectables, given their efficacy from the pharma organization, or from the customers or end patient perspective. The efficacy of injectables, be it lyophilized, non-lyophilized, is very higher compared to the oral pills. So hence the future is definitely towards injectables, and hence cold chain is a critical kind of need of the hour. And just to give few very quick data points, I think in India, overall, we have only 20% of the warehouses which are having cold chain facilities. Now, out of that, only 2% of the warehouses have cold chain facilities to manage the temperature required by injectables and vaccines. Remaining all facilities that are there are good to handle your larger products, which is like vegetables, your exotic vegetables, and various cold chain products, like even we have a lot of vegetation in forms of mushrooms and cold chain storage vegetables. So it's good to handle that. But for pharma, with the right required good warehousing practices and GMP practices, etc., it's only 2%. So definitely there is a huge a kind of gap, and I would say we are seeing that importance in all the formats, all the organizations, be it the supply chain of a manufacturing organization, or even on the retail side, they are building. Just to very quickly share on what the retail side we are trying to do. So once the pharma organization or manufacturing, so my previous organization, if I can say, Cipla, used to hand over these products to the distributor or wholesaler, and then further it goes to the retailer. That part of the network was not monitored, and hence you don't know what cold chain practices are being followed. Now, this part, and I'm sure all of you all would have traveled across India, so you would have noticed that there are still practices that people switch off the entire power of their retail shop while they are going home. That's a very common practice across the retailers in India, especially tier 2, tier 3 cities. Now, this is a big gap, and your cold chain product stays for a good amount of hours without a facility that is needed. Now, that gap is fulfilled by these pharma, e-commerce, or the new age retail companies, where by ensuring that they have a fulfillment center with appropriate cold rooms, with appropriate deep freezers and refrigerators. So that is being monitored, and that is being controlled. However, suggesting or mentioning that with this data point, there is still a good gap that we need to fulfill, and it requires both public and private partnership to kind of take it ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. I think maybe I'll request Sudhir, if you can talk about more of the, am I audible? Yeah. Okay. If you can talk about more about the sources of supply. For example, if pharma companies in India are importing a lot of product from, say, a particular country, and most likely would be China besides others, are the pharma companies, based on the earlier issue, changing their strategy of imports? Are they trying to make it domestic? Are they changing the sources? Are we de-risking our supply chain sources? That is the question.
Yeah, in fact, in the last panel, I think Mr. Jani also said, and I mean, the pandemic was a kind of an opportunity to give a wake-up call, right? In many perspective, in terms of like how to manage the show even when 75 people are actually at home. How to on the behind logistic would be doing, whether it is air or sea, they are managing the show. Otherwise people even would have not eaten, would have not survived in want of food and medicines. So similarly, like what age-old practice mostly I should say for last 10, 15 years, there are a lot of, reliance that we had in China, particularly those ingredients, API, mean particularly, I should say, apart from several excipients, which does not matter much, but nevertheless, based upon the price advantage, based upon the just-in-time kind of, lead time, we have been, a lot dependent on that, and suddenly there is a lull, there is a pause, whereby it was really very difficult as to how do we get it. And, particularly my company has found, apart from US and Europe, that we used to buy API compared to China, I would be keeping good stock of US and Europe because, larger lead time and including therefore ordering and transit. But in case of China, I would be doing, just a month or two. So when we have to, run the show, we find that suddenly there is a total, vacuum. And this is where, and coupled with the fact that, a lot of, tension has started also becoming China versus other countries, particularly in India. So that was a wake-up call, and there are a lot of things started coming in terms of developing, particularly in that country, and not essentially I should say for India, but for other countries as well. So this is number one, as long as one country is concerned, and I don't want to say that it is going to be a full vacuum in China, and then, no, there will be some kind of, sharing of business. And the second thing is, apart from API or any other item, including that of, logistic service providers, it has actually, taught us that we should not rely on a single source. What we need to have at least 2 or 3 or 4, because if one is failed, the second was there. If the second failed, the third is there. And the service providers or supplier also agreed, because earlier they used to give, mass, discounts or good, money, particularly when they are the single source, and they are also encouraging company not to go for the second or third. But the scenario is now getting changed, both from manufacturer side as well as supplier side. They don't mind to have a share of business because many of the time they find themselves helpless. As we have seen, currently we are facing the music in terms of getting the containers in place. Those who used to be lined up and asking us the business. So as the last panel also said, that like Ravi said, that they were, asking to give a bid. So in that case, that actually taught us that we have to have second source, third source, so that, the show must go on. So that's the kind of strategy I think all the manufacturers now have.
Would you like to add? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to kind of say that I am in full agreement with him that over a period of time, people in pharma industries, because it is such a regulated industry, it is expensive to add an additional source. People were reliant upon a single sourcing of most of their active materials specifically. And in this case, it is, let's say, API or intermediates, because when you go to a DMF kind of a structure, you have to file even some of the intermediates when you're actually getting them from China or wherever you get it from. And China has been a very large capacity supplier over a period of time, low cost supplier. But during the period of pandemic, etc., there were questions which were raised in specifically in terms of the reliability of supply. They have been very reliable. I don't have anything against a particular thing. I'm not trying to create a geopolitical war here by saying something. But having said that, people realize that it is not just about China, not just about Europe, because these kinds of things can happen anywhere. And therefore, it's important for us to have multiple sources. And people are now doing a strategy which is by stratification, very high margin products. They would like to have multiple sources, put some additional money upfront, create an alternate sourcing strategy, create a business continuity plan, and keep them ready. And use them once in a while intermittently, even though if it is more expensive. So that's been my experience in the last 20 months, I would say, right?
Yeah, thanks, Srinivas. Very nicely put. And I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is that whether it's a raw material source, key starting material source, API source, I think number one is we are not independent. Nobody is independent. We are all interdependent. Okay, so first we need to accept whether it's a company or a source of supply location, we are interdependent. I mean, no country or company can, be I'm totally independent. So I think that's the first concept, that even if you're talking about a shipper, the airport, the airline, the LSP, or the ground handler, we are all interdependent on each other. Okay, we can't function independently. So therefore, the first thing is the collaboration. Okay, so whether it's a supply of API, of container, or your LSP or a airport, it's a collaboration. And my experience has been that if you have a very good relationship with your supplier or customer, then during times of crisis, the probability of having major issues is reduced. It's not be completely eliminated, but you will get first preference as a shipper. If I have a service provider who have long-term contracts, there would be exceptions, like Ravi said about the container, but definitely, I think if the LSP, may I take your example? Okay, if the LSP had a very good connection with the shipping line, okay, and there was a loyalty program, they might have given priority, of course, at a premium. I'm not denying that people would charge a premium, but at least they would give priority to your loyal customers to give you the supply. Because my past experience in the procurement sourcing, I've experienced that if you have a very good relationship with your service provider or supplier, your priority of getting service is much higher than if you're just a spot buyer. Okay, because then it's only price. So, and this, I think here most of the time we are focusing more on exports. Of course, India is the exporting country for pharmaceutical, but to export the pharmaceuticals, we need to import a lot of ingredients. So you cannot export without the import. So it's a two-way traffic. You need to get incoming product to make outgoing product. Okay. So, and I think the same thing happened with the vaccines in India. Okay, the basic ingredient had to come from another country, which for whatever reason didn't come on time, and therefore it kind of upset the supply chain. So it was not a question of logistics. It was a question of a political scenario. Okay, a priority for each country, taking care of their own citizens. So I think we need to be balanced when it comes to buying from any country or any source. It doesn't really matter. You buy from the best quality, best price, best service. Okay, I mean, these are simple things that I think anybody who's in the business would prefer that. And I would like to now transit to something to do with logistics, and I would request Shadash Atabe, if you can be online. How strongly do you believe the future of pharma and healthcare supply chain will be highly reliant on temperature control logistics?
Okay. Hello, greetings from Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you, Ryan, for giving speech to me. First of all, I would like to thank Stat Media and Indian Transport Logistic News for such an important event organization. As you know, pharmaceutical and healthcare supply chain is highly reliant on temperature control logistics today. And the research and development process of pharmaceutical and healthcare products, especially vaccines and biotechnological drugs and medicines, take many years, and large investments are made by pharmaceutical companies. They are more complicated to research, more complicated to develop, and complicated to transport and store. And also there has been a development of so many advanced therapies that all have derived from human cells. As you know, the inclusion of biological materials in the products means that these products are highly sensitive to temperature change. Also, the demand in cold chain is growing in the air cargo industry. Also, the pharmaceutical logistics is a growing market every year. And also, we saw the last years have rise of temperature-sensitive biopharmaceuticals. And simultaneously, with the growing middle class and higher income level, there is an increasing demand from emerging markets for high-qualified pharmaceutical goods, biopharmaceuticals. And also, it's a fact that pharmaceutical logistics will continue to grow, and sectoral research support this thesis. And to maintain effectiveness of the pharmaceutical and healthcare goods, different raw materials coming from the other countries to produce the main product and also the finished goods, they need to be stored at a variety of temperatures. And any deviation in these products or incorrect handling of products could spoil it permanently, and they might become less effective, even toxic. And these are all have serious consequences for patient health. I think anyone working in the pharmaceutical industry, from manufacturing side to logistics side, anyone doesn't want to face such kind of issues. As a result of that, temperature controlled logistics is imperative for many pharmaceutical products to ensure optimal delivery on time and in right conditions. Also, as some panelists mentioned about that, we are seeing a change from generic medicines to biotechnological. It's also increased the importance of temperature control on pharmaceutical logistics. That's why I strongly believe that the dependence of reliance of the pharmaceutical logistics on temperature control will continue. Also, as a matter of fact, we have seen the closest example of such kind of situation in the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. As everybody knows, some kind of COVID-19 vaccines require temperature control at the extreme levels. For example, -70, -50, something like that to protect the product integrity. Although the passive packaging solutions have developed to achieve these extreme levels, temperature levels, but there is a still dependence on temperature control. That's why I think that pharmaceutical and healthcare products, especially transported by air cargo, will continue to be dependent on temperature control logistics.
Okay, thank you, Shahbaz. I would like to continue this discussion on the topic. We heard in the previous panel that there was a discussion about building capacity and the airlines, etc. And on the other hand, we also see a trend for moving to biological products and gene therapies. Okay, so with my limited understanding about gene therapies, I would say that in terms of biological products and gene therapies, the prices definitely would be higher, but the volumes may not be as high as generics and bulk products. Okay, the volumes, because based on my past experience, I think normally if you make, say, a toxin product, okay, which goes into these fillers, cosmetic fillers, okay, the basic toxin products goes in a very seal control container, which is very small, and it is shipped to the area where it is formulated and distributed. Okay, so the first stage will be a very small quantity, of course, at very highly temperature controlled situation. And the second stage of manufacturing of the finished product is manufactured would go under a more, say, 2 to 8 degrees temperature. Okay, so just to counter the discussions, one side we are building capacity, which is great. I'm talking about airline capacity, okay? And we heard Ravi saying that the generics products are price sensitive products because let us accept it that most of the manufacturing in India for export is what the global world calls it as generic products. Okay, we have branded generics, but globally, India is a supplier of vastly generic products, which is high volume, low cost. Okay, so we need to understand if we have, and the priorities by most of the generics manufacturers is for cost. Okay, great to have reasonable cost air freight versus sea freight, great to have. So if that situation makes sense, including the inventory carrying costs, great. I think any pharma company would love that, provided the cold chain integrity is maintained. Okay, so but when you look at it in the future, how do you see this happening? We are building capacity on one side, but the future of value-added pharmaceuticals may be reducing in volume. So maybe Shahbaz, if you would like to share, and I would like to then ask Shankar if you could add something.
It away. Okay.
So,
Sorry, I'm taking the word from you. I'd like to give you 3 examples because this happened in my region. One is Mumbai, one is Israel, and one is South Africa. The South Africa and Israel is quality products, where it's not size, it's not the large quantity, it's a small quantity. In Mumbai, I must say, I cannot name both the parties, but Ravi will know very well. One of the generic manufacturer, thanks to them, with the help of the drive of the LSP, we kickstarted our flight in Mumbai, May 22nd, exactly last year. We brought in 3 flights for them, and we mixed commercial with their freight, and we kickstarted the flight. We got back within a month what we were doing pre-pandemic time with 3 flights as a P2C flight because there were no passenger. We were performing the same tonnages as we were doing pre-pandemic time, almost 80% of it. That's one partnership we speak about. So generics can also afford Ravi. Please, thank you. I know Vilas is sitting there. He's saying, okay, yeah, let's look at it. But coming to the other thing, we had another importer. They had shelf life medicine needed, correct, which is reverse count from 72 to -0. So every minute you spend on the air or on the ground, it's a waste. And if your aircraft gets stuck somewhere, technically, they would fly in a charter flight to pick up that parcel. They underwrote part of our flight, and we could kickstart one of our stations. Similarly, why you talk about the biosimilars and genome and various things, is happening in Japan, is happening in Israel, and these guys are paying for those niche products. We do not want to kill them with the price, but we want to make it equivalent that we handle it. So that's where the know-how has to be there, and we handle it. And that's how we revived all the 3 stations. Now, let me add one more because there's somebody in my colleague here who's from the sea air business. In Dubai, there was a log jam. We started with the flights. 3 forwarders said we want a BSA, sea air conversion coming from China, Vietnam, and via Dubai. So this is all about how transparent and how in a partnership mode you're able to work, and you have to solve it. Yes, those prices may not exist maybe 1 year or 2 years from now, but I think a fair amount of respect has come to all the 3 parties, be it the shipper, be it the LSP, or be it the carrier, that let's not talk price first. Price is the 4th element. First 3 is the service, the quality, the assurances. Same was with our Kenya market, giving me $1.50 only for vegetables flying to London. Yet we could kickstart that flight with P2C. So it's all about how you speak with people, how you manage it. Yes, you have to deliver and you have to give the quality. So it's all about that. As people, you saw 5 different segments of products, yet we could do businesses. Unlike China, which all carrier colleagues of mine will say, yes, China, the boom happened because they were selling PPE stuff. They were reaching the world around. Whereas from India, it was only commercial goods and to a fair amount, pharma, not even vaccines. Vaccines, the government decided, and that's not large quantities. For example, that whatever vaccines came in, they're not tonnages, they're a few kilos. And we were doing commercial business. All airlines which is running business from Mumbai or India is not sending any PPE stuff. At least last year, nobody had it. We didn't manufacture, but yet everybody could come out with some solution. So I personally feel that one is this partnership has to exist. The mutual understanding and respect has to exist for pricing. At the same time, you have to develop the product together. I mean, we cannot do it standalone. Without the terminal operator at Mumbai, Manoj and Tushar, and in Delhi, Dial, we cannot do anything standalone. We have to speak to people, because at the end of the evening, my ultimate customer sitting in the front table there, who has to be happy at the end of the evening, and there has to be value for money for you also. So that's my sharing with you. I'm quite happy to share that because it's personal success for me also.
Thanks. Shadas, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I would like to add something. I agree with Mr. Shankar in some points. For example, when it comes to, when we are talking about pharmaceutical products, especially high-value pharmaceuticals, such as biotechnological, biopharmaceuticals, and quality is the first. The price is not the main factor affecting the transportation model, as air freight or sea freight. And also with the upcoming of the, with the facing of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, the capacity became the main problem. And also all airlines have tried to do their best to offer capacity. Also, with the decreasing the capacity of the issues in the sea freight, the air freight power, air freight hence became power. And then most of the airlines, including Turkish Cargo, Turkish Airlines, transformed their passenger aircrafts, wide-body passenger aircrafts, in order to offer capacity, meet the demand. to freighters. And but it depends of the period. It depends on the product quality, product value, and also depends on the consignee and shipper decision, air freight or sea freight.
Okay, thank you. Then Gaurav, I'll move to you next. And because you're from Reliance Retail Pharma, okay, so because it's a bit of retail, and there was some discussion about e-pharmacy or e-commerce. So I've seen it over the years when we had kind of said that e-commerce would also make waves in the country. There was a lot of skepticism or resistance to change. And I can see slowly it is making changes. And maybe the pandemic also helped to change the way of buying. So from your perspective, how do you see the network of complex pharma products, both upstream, whether it starts from the API manufacturing, whether you take the standard distribution or whether you do it e-commerce way? Do you see that there are going to be major changes in the near future? And what is your take on this?
Thanks, Ryan, for the question. So, I think my 2 cents to this is that definitely the network for any pharma e-commerce or an e-retail organization has to be highly penetrated. And I think there's a lot of complexity as well as a lot of opportunity lying there. So I think very clearly this would need investment, but at the same time the investment would be highly EBITDA accretive. So if I say kind of go deeper into this point, there are today so at the center of everything that we do from a pharma e-commerce or retail perspective is the patient. How can we deliver faster to him, and how can we deliver more conveniently to him? And hence there has to be stores, there has to be partnership with the existing infrastructure, existing network, and also we are building our own e-commerce networks, so fulfillment centers, as well as store-in-store format. So again, coming to the point of customer convenience, we need to deliver him fast, because pharmaceutical products he's expecting in few hours. And if I tell about my current business, or from the organization's perspective, 70% today is what is ordered is chronic, and only remaining 20 to 30% is acute. And the injectables form, especially if I'm now coming to the cold chain part, it is part of both my chronic, which is in terms of insulins, etc. And also on the acute side, we have a lot of injectables, which is antibacterials or antibiotics, antifungals, and COVID definitely, as you rightly said, has kind of enhanced or catalyzed the process of adoption of pharma e-commerce. Now, what we are trying to give is, again, give him more convenience through omni-channels, so he can order online and get it at the doorstep. Second, he can order online, but pick it from a nearby smart point store or a smart point existing infrastructure that we have of Reliance smart stores and smart points. Secondly, he can order at the store and get it home delivered to any patient who's sitting at home. So trying to bring in more speed, and that's where I see the LSPs forming a playing a very critical role in terms of speed to delivery, or the speed in terms of those pin codes, especially in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. How can the delivery be fastest with the lowest possible TAT and with the assured quality that we expect as a standard quality? So great opportunity that I see both for us as a retail organization, because the current pie is only 5% of the overall pharmaceutical sale that we have is through the e-commerce channel, but that is increasing at a very unprecedented speed, almost to the tune of 100%. It is growing that fast. So this pie definitely is very interesting and very, I would say, value accretive both for us and as well as the logistic partners with whom we are working to invest in their capabilities and penetration. Yeah.
Thanks, Gaurav.
Right.
Yeah,
I would actually like to add a little bit here.
sure.
You know, there are two parts and two aspects if I were to split the whole problem into two. One is the ability to deliver and give service to the patient, to the customer on time as soon as possible. And the other part is actually the cold chain part of it. Yeah. Now, if you look at the e-commerce industry, forget about the pharmaceutical guys. The development of e-commerce industry in the non-pharma side has been far ahead of what it has been in the pharma. Now, there is no reason why a pharma industry cannot develop. But then there is this added complexity of actually the cold chain bit, which is where, in my personal opinion, which is exactly what Gaurav mentioned, that, can we make use of the local service points? These days, there are new terminologies and new innovation which is coming up in the e-commerce also. There's something called as a dark store, which actually all these people are preparing. And as of last Saturday, Amazon, for example, has actually said that in 300 cities, they have got actually the pantry service and the fresh service is being merged, and they can actually deliver to you cold store, freezer store, everything in a span of 6 hours time. So you order in the morning, there is a time slot which you can actually book. Within that 2 hours, the person is coming and delivering you, including a frozen thing like an ice cream or a frozen food or anything. For that matter, let's say if you take, let's say, a big basket, our milk, which is actually delivered every day in the morning, comes in 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, by the way, frozen. Yeah. I mean, whichever way you call it. And every single day we get it. It's a matter of mindset. We have to apply the similar principles to actually medicines also. There are so many items which come with such a low shelf life, which come fresh to us. Now it's a matter of applying those principles to actually getting those medicines here also. Yeah. And I keep giving this example of foods industry because in foods industry, when you go and actually buy something off the shelf, you don't look at the expiry date, but you look at the manufacturing date. But when you come to pharmaceutical industry, you look at the expiry date, which means you're actually working on a other side of the end. You don't look at the stock freshness. Yeah. The whole mindset is changing. Trust me. Even now, today, a lot of retailers, a lot of consumers, a lot of patients are also looking at it from a manufacturing date perspective. Legislation is changing. Nobody actually is, very few countries are telling you to actually put the date of manufacturing and the date of expiry. Now, in a foods industry, date of manufacturing is extremely important. Okay, so all I'm trying to say, all in all, the marriage of the two in terms of service mindset changing in the country, retail, and the ability of the LSPs, which Gaurav mentioned, to be able to deliver in the cold chain, etc. Both of them are increasing at an unprecedented pace, and I see no reason why this is actually going to blow out of proportion in the times to come.
I just want to, in a lighter vein, I think the issue here when you compare milk, ice cream, or frozen food, is that it's like a style here. When you reach a red light, if there's nobody looking, you go. So in pharmaceuticals, you can't catch so easily. Okay, sorry, I'm making this, but it's a mindset, and you rightly said it's a mindset of compliance. And so, because you cannot say that the fridge was put off, like somebody said, somebody put off the fridge at night. But if you do it for an ice cream the next day, the shape goes. So you won't buy, the customer won't buy. Here, what happens, even if you come in the morning, it's cool when you receive it. But what happened whole night, nobody knows. So this, I think, is a mindset which has to begin also from the pharma company, because it's a compliance, but also creating awareness to the patients, the customers, like, you and me, all of us, we buy products from the chemist. Okay. And on one side, we take utmost care to produce, pack, ship, cold chain products. I think I've been repeating this for many years. We take so much of care to produce, pack, ship in cold chain, temperature control, from one end of the world to the other. Okay, and I think it's a great job, and we're doing a fairly good job. we also need to think about doing the similar thing here. It's not easy, but we need to move in that direction, because end of the day, besides producing products for others, we also need to produce quality products for us. I mean, so I think, I don't know why we as an industry, especially in this part of the world, hesitate to think that way.
Right, let me give you, I'm sorry to cut you.
No, no,
Let me give you another example. On one hand, we talk about the cold chain, that the temperature has to be maintained, whether it's an ice cream or a milk. I mean, the same food industry, if you actually order something on a Swiggy or a Zomato, you get it hot. Yeah. Now, the temperature is being maintained using passive temperature control, whatever it is, that's fast transportation, within half an hour delivery, Domino's Pizza, all these things. It's a matter of mindset. Innovation will actually prove us to be able to deliver a lot more than what we are delivering today. It is a mindset. Exactly, I'm reinforcing what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think, what about you, Sudhir? You have anything?
I just wanted to add one thing, like the mindset between the FMC, I mean, food product and this thing. And look at, the angle like what Gaurav is associated with e-commerce. One fine day I got, medicine through one of the company, I don't want to name it. And the manufacturing date is very, very, early date, though the expiry is couple of months later.
Yeah.
And the time spent between both of these around a year or so, or maybe 9 months or whatever. Now look at, if I would be going to the nearby retail store, I would be asking, why don't you give me the earlier latest one? Here it is inevitable actually, because I do not have that kind of communication channel. And in this way, sometime what happened in terms of even the pricing would have been the earlier price, which is lower, and the guy would be giving current price minus 20%, which is equivalent to what he would be selling on the same price. So that is also one of the angle actually one will have to look at.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely right. So I think Shankar also
As
said
a
something.
buyer,
Yeah.
I should always look for products which is closer to the manufacturing date and refuse anything that's later. That's the market force. As tomorrow, if a pharmacist is giving me something which is manufactured in 2020 of say January, and if he's asking me to use it now, I'll say, sorry, I don't need it. I go to another shop. Then automatically that feedback will also go to the pharma companies. Don't have such a stretched expiry date either. Keep it short cycle.
Absolutely right. The trade-off is when there are price differences.
20%.
No, price difference between the earlier manufacturing date and the.
Exactly. That's where the 20% discount is. You say if you're
Exactly.
within 1 kilometer radius, free delivery, 20% discount.
Exactly. So I'd like to ask the next question to Shadas. What are the risk factors you foresee in the current and future cold chain transportation? And what kind of investments you think should be made to eliminate, or not eliminate, but at least reduce these risks?
Okay, thank you for your question. Since the subject of our panel is about the cold chain capabilities, I will try to answer your question within the scope of cold chain capabilities. I will not go into detail, for example, like security. And firstly, parties working in this business must adopt risk-based approach to determine critical control points and take actions to reduce the risk with their future or current investments. And also there are a lot of international organizations such as IATA, European Union, United States. They are also working in this business. They are trying to find all for years to define the regulations and rules in this pharmaceutical business, logistic business, EU GDP, World Health Organization GDP standards, something like that. And future plans, future investment plans must be evaluated in according to dynamics of each parties by itself. To give an example, I'm looking at the subject from the airline side. I can say that the Cool is a good example for the investment, but other parties should evaluate their own business process. And also in this point, I would like to point out our product called as TK Pharma. We designed this product for pharmaceutical and logistic, pharmaceutical healthcare industry to maintain the cold chain at the global standards. I will try to I will share some examples from investment made by Turkish Cargo. I think one of the most important critical control points is the warehouse, and the storing shipment is the temperature control storage rooms. This is one of the risks with cold chain capabilities. Do you have enough capacity or not in your warehouse? Companies should evaluate their current business volume, business data, and their projection for the future while they are making for their future plans. As I said, if you don't have enough capacity in terms of temperature control storage rooms, you will probably face temperature excursion, temperature deviation, and customer complaint at the end. And also, it should not be forgotten that pharmaceutical and healthcare products should be stored in a dedicated temperature control storage rooms. You should not store them with any other type of cargo. As Turkish Cargo, we are aware of this importance, and in that way, accordingly, we plan our investments. Maybe you might heard about that. Currently, we are operating at both airports, Istanbul New Airport and Atatürk Airport, the old one. At both airports, we have temperature-controlled dedicated storage rooms. And we have considered our past business volume and our future plans while we are deciding to our future plans and aims. And also, for example, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were working on the COVID-19 vaccine distribution scenarios, and we were trying to calculate how much market share we can get from this business. And then we decided our capacity is not sufficient. And then we decided to construct a new facility at the Atatürk Airport. Within a few months, we managed to construct a new facility to use for the storage of the COVID-19 vaccines. If we hadn't been proactive, and if we had not been launched this new facility, our storage capacity would not have sufficient for our increased vaccine transportation. And similarly, we followed the same process while planning our new mega terminal, which is currently under construction and will be open in a few months in the very near future, and called as the Smarties. We have made huge investment. With this investment, we will have much more capacity than our current capacity, 3 times bigger than our capacity at both airports currently, and called as the TK Pharma Constant Climate Center for pharmaceutical products. And also another critical control point, palletization process in the warehouse. Most of the operations of palletization, build up and breakdown are done in ambient temperature area. But with this facility, with our new facility, we will be able to palletize the shipments in the required temperature range. For example, if you have a 2 to 8 pharmaceutical shipments, the build up and breakdown operations of this shipment will be done in this temperature range. And also, when we are talking about technology in this globalized world, we should also extremely benefit from the advantage of technology. And you should combine advantage of technologies and your infrastructures. With our new investment, we will use totally automation system that will minimize human intervention. And also we will have temperature controlled cells in addition to our constant climate center. And we will be able to take the pallets, pharmaceutical goods, automatically to the required temperature range, to required temperature cells without any human intervention. These are some examples of the investments regarding the temperature control facilities. As other panelists also highlighted that in the air cargo industry, another critical control post in tarmac. The majority of temperature excursions are experienced during the tarmac transportation. Therefore, having cool dollies in inventory of airlines, most of the big airlines, is an important factor to reduce the risk. As Turkish Cargo, we have our current cool dollies to use on tarmac. Additionally, as I said, we are trying to calculate our future projections, and then we decided to add new cool dollies into our product portfolio in our inventory. In a few months, we will be able to use these new cool dollies in our tarmac operations. Another important critical control point, which is ignored most of the parties, is subcontractor management. Most of the airlines just focusing on their quality at only hub, but they should not forget the abroad stations. And companies should not forget that failure of subcontractors is their failure in their customer minds. That's why subcontractor management is another important point. Companies, airlines can make investment on this point by signing quality agreements and making audits, online and on-site audits, and also SLAs, and also they can encourage subcontractors to make investment in line with IATA CIV Pharma regulations and industry requirements. And we see these examples during the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. These are the main.
Shada, very, very interesting to hear the developments and future investments. I don't know whether you were there at the beginning of the conference, but I think a lot of work is been done in Mumbai, at the Mumbai airport, the Pharma Excellence Center, and a lot of investments. If you were there in the beginning, of course you heard. So we are very happy that investments are being made across the globe for pharma, where we have separate shipment of pharmaceuticals compared to perishables, and the supply chain has been integrated in such a way that the integrity of the product is maintained. So it's very nice that we have airport in Mumbai, we have maybe airports in Europe, not only in Turkey, but other airports as well, and hopefully airports in United States, so that we have a supply chain, smooth supply chain, which can ensure the integrity of the product. So we are very happy to hear that investments are not only taking place, but continuously improving. And at the moment, we are actually, people are feeling a little hungry here because it's almost 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Although the clock tells me, not for you, because, but although the clock tells me I have 9 minutes more, but I think the stomachs are saying that it's enough. So if you have questions, maybe maximum 1 or 2, I would be happy to take it, and then we'll close. Okay, Bharat bhai, please.
Ryan, just one quick point, if I can very quickly add or share here. So now being on the other side of the table, from manufacturing to retail, I also just thought on the previous question where you asked, how do we ensure the temperature control or temperature sensitive products? So there are certain solutions that are already existing in terms of temperature monitoring, which can definitely be utilized. But yes, there is definitely an investment that the manufacturing organizations need to put in, while there are stickers, there are data loggers, which tells you. So like you mentioned a good example in terms of ice cream, you come to know because the shape changes. Whereas in terms of a vial or an ampule, you don't come to know because the shape or exactly touch and feel remains the same. But there are solutions actually in the market which tell you the sticker color changes, or there are temperature sensitive solutions, packaging solutions which are available. I think it's a good time that we move to adoption of these, or increase the adoption of these solutions that are available. So I think we have been talking about those, but it's an investment, of course. We need to look at that as well from the manufacturer's perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gaurav, for sharing. Bharat bhai, we'll take the first question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Respected panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bharat Thakkar from Zeus Logistics. As Ryan mentioned earlier, you just touched upon compliance. Now, we all are aware of the concept of CityPack. To counter that, World Customs Organization around 2005 brought AEO. Why? Because CityPacks was only for shipments going into United States. World Customs Organization wanted to and fro, the transportation of all goods to and fro should be safe. And India became a signatory to that around 2010-11. And it is for all the pharma suppliers, it's a request again. I have been, playing this record of HMV. The company has closed down, 33 speed. But I think it is very important to emphasize that when you apply for AEO, you don't only get the financial benefits of less bank guarantee, no examination. Customs has actually literally forced us, freight forwarders or CHAs, we are now crowned as custom brokers by putting more and more responsibility on us. But the end game is, unless you as a supplier do not become AEO, and in turn, I think truckers are also here. The concept of secure supply chain in India actually doesn't exist. Shankar, we give the declaration that you airlines ask. We are cutting our throat before we are even coming to you with our cargo. We don't even know what we are actually giving. Therefore, it is very important for all the stakeholders to understand and explain to the supplier, manufacturer, exporter, be it pharma suppliers, be it cool chain, that your AEO concept should be applied for immediately, and the gap between your supply point, that is your factory, into the air cargo complex, where we as your forwarder accept cargo, and MIL was the first custodian who applied for AEO and got it. It is very important. Then only the Indian supply will become secure. Thanks, Ryan, for taking that compliance word.
Yeah, thank you, Bharat, for sharing.
It's a very interesting point, actually.
Yeah, very interesting. So, any last question? No, okay. So, thank you very much, especially Srinivas Rao, Gaurav Bhatia, Sudhir, Shadash, and Shankar for being on this physical virtual call. And I think we've had a detailed discussion, and best wishes for our future investments in cold chain. Thank you all.
Thank you.